Hello and good morning. It's still the morning, a little bit before 12 noon. Welcome to Monday Motivation here with Contessa of Countess Wellness LLC, which I am your holistic wellness therapist and coach. Today, we're going to be talking about what are you grieving? And also, I'll be giving a little bit of insight since I got a little time today about an element in the movie, Tyler Perry's movie, Straw, which is a lot of buzz going on timelines, split opinions and takebacks and, perspectives, which is great because it creates dialogue around the film, which I think is really important. As well as make mention that I, along with several other women, are on a panel to talk about grief during a virtual webinar this Saturday. So if you are able to come, there is a link in the description of this live where you can go ahead to purchase a ticket or I do have the ability to give away a complimentary ticket to this Saturday's virtual webinar. I'll also put a picture in the comments to get more details about it, or you just click the link as well. So a couple of things, right? Personally, I've been as of recently able to witness two different types of funerals, one of which is a close member and community friend, Kormasa, around my age, and also witness the funeral of my late professor, Dr. Michael Swanson. And from each, I was able to take some gems, of course, of how to appreciate life, how to appreciate people that are in your life, and also appreciate the life that we do have, the air that we do have in our lungs, etc. But it also made me even more hyper alert about those that are in my life that I want to make memories with and not take it for granted. And so grief definitely comes in different ways. Grief is expressed in many different ways. I would say I was more emotional around my friend Kormasa's death because it was unexpected for me. I recall us talking about books were going to birth and all these different ideas, and then to see that, wow, she was around my age. Life is not promised to us, but she did so much in that dash between the years, right, of being born and then put to rest. She did live her life. And with my professor, my late professor, I felt he lived a long life, right? And I felt he was able to make so much change and impact as well in his long life. And I don't know why I was at more peace when I went to his funeral. I'm not too sure what that could be about at this moment as I'm still processing it. I'll probably process it some more with my therapist. Yes, therapists need therapists too because we're living life out here. We're still holding the weights of the world while also still being a part of the lived experiences in this world. So that was something that was different for me. Another thing is taking into account that this is year 5, y'all, post-pandemic. And there's a lot of grief that surrounds that part of the lived experience for many of us humans. And there's a lot of griefs that occurred not only just from deaths that occurred, right? But there were people's dreams and visions that they weren't able to fulfill because they felt the overpressure of the pandemic. Some didn't get to have their milestone birthdays. So if you see somebody that is celebrating their 45th or 55th or 65th birthday, it's because they didn't get to celebrate their monumental decade birthday, the milestone birthday for that new decade that they're entering in. So you're seeing a lot of redos for that. And certain graduations didn't get to happen the way people anticipated. They had to have it virtually. So there is a grief of that. There's a grief of separation. A lot of people had a lot of introspective moments in their relationships, and they was able to finally see each other after not being so busy and finding more about themselves. And some relationships ended, whether there were long-term relationships, married couples, etc. There's a grief in that. There's a grief in divorce. There's a grief in separation. There's a grief in things that did not happen the way we had planned them to. And it's okay to grieve those losses, to grieve those, expectations that did not get fulfilled. So I don't want anybody to minimize your experience when it does come to grief. The particular grief that we're most likely going to be talking about will be grief of loved ones at the virtual conference, just so you will know. But I'm pretty sure there will be other types of griefs that will come up, because I know the last time that that I was a part of the panelists, one of them was talking about a grief of career, a grief of the jobs, right? And that happens in real life. I can relate to all of those griefs, actually, that I just mentioned. But I want to go into, namely, the grief that was experienced in a form of psychoses, right? Or combination of psychoses in the movie Straw by Tyler Perry. Very, very emotionally, well, Tyler Perry does a lot of emotionally stirring films. That's just how he is. He's always talked about how the woman in his life, he centers a lot of the films around, because he's witnessed them in these different roles, in these different lived experiences. So if it's why is it always the black woman that's portrayed as this way? He's doing it based on the woman that he grew up with most of the time. And also, there are a lot of women that are able to relate to the main character, which is Shania's situation. Like, snaps. Everything that could have went went wrong. Okay? And if you think about it, if you get to watch towards the end, a lot of things that didn't make sense in the duration of the film is because that's what happens when you are experiencing a form of psychosis. There are things that are illogical that present themselves when you're in this kind of state of mind, and also there are memory gaps that can happen. And so what we did see towards the end is that when she thought that she was doing these things for her daughter, in essence, because she was going through so much stuff, and what we call in a psychology word, social determinants of health. These are things that impact your very livelihood. You know, Maslow's hierarchy of needs: food, shelter, comfort, security. These are a lot of things within the different social determinants of health, which we call Z codes, when we have to do diagnostics, but it supports the regular, coding of diagnoses. These are different things that people do experience. And because it's stacked and it is very complex, it can cause you to kind of snap, literally. And then on top of all of that, her daughter dies. She went into a state of psychosis. She didn't even have the capacity to process that her daughter passed away. So all of the things that was leading to the end is jumbled, because that's what's going to happen. When you're in a state of trauma, not everything is going to come out linear. Not everything's going to come out in the same exact time stamp, right? Not everything is even going to make sense once minimally trying to process. Now, when you sit with the, professional and you're going slowly through the timeline of events, things will start to unfold. Things will start to make a little bit more clarity. The truth of what really happened will start to unfold. And so that is what you are witnessing here. Now, he only had an hour and 47 minutes to get all this in there. But like I said, that's the point of storytelling, is being able to tell bits and pieces where you can. Now, if he wanted to make this into a series, he could. But I think he just wanted to really get it out there so that way people who can relate can relate. There's a lot of people that were able to relate, and it is all on your timeline that you will be able to see. What I wanted to go over are some different types of symptomologies and explanations when it comes to psychoses and grief. Once again, if you think this is something that you may have or are experiencing, definitely make sure to seek a mental health provider that can help you really walk through this journey. So when it comes to psychoses and grief, in extreme cases, acute grief can often lead to a brief psychosis or psychotic symptoms, particularly in the matter of a history of psychotic episodes that never been addressed, any unresolved trauma, and extreme stress with no support system. If you guys paid attention, she had nobody. She's like, I have nobody. What do you mean do I have X, Y, and Z, right? In her mind and also in her lived experience, she was all by herself trying to take care of everything as a single mother. So never mind trying to process that her daughter died, right? Because that's too much. That would have made her break, which, it made her snap. But because of this, is complicating the grief. And it's complicating the ability to be able to process what's going on because everything's back. Some common psychotic features that may appear are some hallucinations, most commonly visual or auditory the hallucinations of the deceased, hearing their voice, seeing their image. This can be seen in the different scenes in the beginning of the movie. She's thinking that she's taking her child to school. She's thinking that she's bathing her. She's really believing all these things because she's imagining that her daughter is still alive. And then when you get to see the replay of it, you can see why the principal is looking at her like, you're not dropping off anybody, nobody called you, nobody did X, Y, and Z. But that's what happens in these psychotic episodes. It could be seen as delusions as well. Beliefs that the loved one is still alive despite clear evidence of their passing away, and that the bereaved has magical control over death. So sometimes that can happen where it's like a protective factor, where it's like absolute disbelief and delusions that this person still is alive no matter what the actual concrete evidence is, even if it's in their face. So how we can distinguish between normal grief versus a psychosis. Normal grief can include dreams, fleeting hallucinations, or sensing of a presence. So that's normal. And even with spirituality, right? Some cultures and religious backgrounds believe that they can actually feel the presence of their loved ones who have deceased. So this is what we would consider normal grief. Now, psychosis usually involves loss of contact with any reality. As you can see in the film, she lost total contact of what was really happening to her that entire 24 hours. Disorganized thinking, which you can kind of see some of the things jump from scene to scene to scene and maybe didn't make sense, but definitely her thinking was illogical as well as disorganized. Having paranoia or delusions, once we was talking about like the belief that the person is actually here still living, and an inability to distinguish between reality and imagination. It was once towards the end when her mom was on the phone that she was brought back into reality that, oh my goodness, my daughter passed away last night. And sometimes it takes that familiar, comforting voice or familiar voice to break the psychotic or psychosis to be able to bring the person back to reality. Some support that can help this, of course, is like talk therapy or different types of therapy that is primarily focused with trauma, um, trauma, um, trauma, I don't want to say resolutions, but trauma revelations, because we can't always say that, oh, we're going to fix you. That's not our job. Our job is to sit here with you, unpack, make sense of some of the trauma that has happened. Medication for psychoses or any type of severe anxiety and depression is available. Some safety planning that can happen, because sometimes what can happen is the suicidal ideations could occur because people are like thinking they're better off dead so they could join their loved one, and there could be an increase in suicidal ideations. And also some support groups like group therapy and grief, or group therapy surrounding trauma, or different types of specific losses. Like say if it's a mother who lost their child like either during birth or before birth, right, having a miscarriage, that is a specific type of group to go into that can be very niched into that specific type of grief. So I just wanted to kind of just really go over that with some of the explanation of what was going on in the movie Straw. I don't want to do too much, but I feel like it was definitely, this is a very educational moment, especially because some people may see the movie as another Tyler Perry movie of a black woman struggling and can't make it, etc. But I wanted to really teach on this part about the dissociative grief that occurs, especially when it comes to psychoses, from complex trauma and traumatic events that happen. There's a lot more that happened in the film, as you can see, like, police injustices, and you can also see with the health disparities, and, just there's a lot. There's a lot that is woven into there within an hour and 41 minutes that he could. But the most important one I wanted to touch upon is grief, specifically because, and especially, I will be on the panel for the virtual meeting this Saturday, in which I'll put the information. If you're not able to get the link right now, I'll put the link in the comments, as well as the flyer. If you would like to be entered into receiving a complimentary ticket, then what you would do is share this live so that way you can spread more awareness. And also, if you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, that would be much appreciated. Thank you for those who did tune in. If you're catching a replay, put hashtag replay in the comments below and tell me what you're taking from this, or what was resonating with you from my live today. So thank you very much, and I will talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.